There is a specific kind of professional who is always surprised. They are competent. Frequently, they are the most competent person in the room. They deliver, they refine, they hold the standard when others let it slip. And then, at the moment of consequence, the promotion, the budget, the assignment that decides a career, they are passed over. The person who advances is someone they privately regard as their inferior. The competent professional absorbs this as an injustice. They are wrong. It was not an injustice. It was an allocation, and they declined to participate in it. The belief that produced this outcome is almost universal. It holds that office politics is a form of corruption, a moral failure of the organization, something honest people should rise above. It holds that doing excellent work is itself a strategy, and that staying out of politics protects you. This is the romantic fallacy, and it is expensive. 76% of professionals report that office politics directly affected their advancement. 93% of managers confirm that politics operates inside their organization. Roughly 70% say that engaging with them is necessary. No documented large organization has ever operated on pure formal merit, not one. So consider what staying out of politics actually purchases. It does not purchase neutrality. Neutrality is not on the menu. What it purchases is systemic exposure, a position in which your output is harvested, recredited, and converted into capital by people who understood the allocation system you refused to read. The professional who announces that they stay above politics has not opted out of the game. They have forfeited their move while the clock continues to run. The organization records this not as integrity, it records it as availability. Here is the reframe that the rest of this analysis will defend. Office politics is not corruption. It is the operating system. It is the informal allocation mechanism that every organization runs beneath the formal one, because the formal rules can never specify who gets scarce attention, scarce budget, and scarce trust. The org chart tells you the reporting lines. It is silent on power. And the professional who mistakes the chart for the system is reading a map of a country that does not exist. This architecture is not a modern corporate defect. It is an anthropological constant. Aristotle observed that man is a political animal, and that the polis, the bounded community, is the natural unit of human cooperation. He did not mean this as praise of politicians. He meant it as a description of mechanism. Inside any bounded community, resources are distributed through persuasion, standing, and alliance, not by edict. And his most uncomfortable conclusion was procedural. The citizen who abstains from public life is not thereby free of it. He is simply governed by those who showed up. The firm is a polis. The abstention is the same. The consequence is the same. The Indian epics press the point further. In the Mahabharata, the most consequential figure on the field is Krishna, who holds no throne and commands no army of his own. He drives a chariot. And yet the war turns on his counsel, his timing, and the alliances he brokers. Formal title and real authority have come apart entirely. The person who decides is not the person the structure names. Anyone who has watched a junior executive route a decision through a quiet, untitled advisor has watched this exact divergence. The Yoruba tradition supplies the final piece. Eshu stands at the crossroads, the Orisha of communication and access, and custom holds that he must be acknowledged first, because nothing reaches the other powers except through the one who governs the threshold. This is not superstition. It is an organizational chart. Every institution has its Eshu, the gatekeeper who controls what information moves, whose calendar must be cleared, whose tacit approval precedes the formal one. Ignore that node and your proposal does not fail. It simply never arrives. So the system is old, and it is consistent across every culture that ever organized scarcity. The question is how to read it inside your own building. There are 3 diagnostic markers, and they are observable this week. First, who is consulted before a decision is formalized? Not who signs it, who is sounded out in the corridor beforehand. That person holds real allocation power regardless of title. Second, whose absence stalls a project. If a meeting cannot proceed without a particular individual, that individual is a load-bearing node, and the structure has quietly admitted it. Third, who can spend social capital without asking permission? Who can make a request of a peer's team and have it honored on standing alone? These three signals map the real org chart. They rarely match the published one. Underneath all of it sits a single behavioral mechanism, and it is not cynical, it is cognitive. The human brain allocates trust through in-group sorting and social proof. We extend resources, latitude, and the benefit of the doubt to those we read as one of us, and we make that judgment largely independent of measured output. This is the corporate asymmetry that competence cannot by itself overcome. The work is necessary. It was never sufficient. Because the decision-maker is not asking who performed best. They are asking, beneath conscious awareness, who do I trust with this? And trust is a function of belonging, not of throughput. This is not a failure of corporate ethics. It is a concession to bounded rationality. In any complex ecosystem, human brains face severe information asymmetry. A senior executive cannot personally audit the thousands of data points generated by every individual contributor. Because they cannot measure everything, they optimize for predictability. They look for signals that reduce their cognitive load. In-group alignment is that signal. When an executive chooses a candidate they trust over a candidate who simply has clean data, they are running a survival heuristic. They are choosing a predictable relationship over an unvouched asset. Competence is an individual attribute. Trust is an infrastructure. And infrastructure always wins. Consider two scenarios. In the first, an analyst produces the firm's strongest quarterly model, sends it up the chain, and waits for the work to speak. It does not speak. A colleague who spent the preceding 2 quarters aligning their parameters with the strategy head's multi-year objectives presents a weaker model, but receives the lead. The analyst calls this favoritism. It was not favoritism. It was an allocation of trust, secured long before the meeting began. In the second, a project stalls for 6 weeks. Every formal approval is in place. What is missing is the tacit endorsement of an untitled operations director, the issue of that building, whose silence the team mistook for neutrality. They built a 40-slide justification deck, met every technical specification, and assumed the process would automatically route itself to execution. But they failed to realize that the formal workflow is merely an invitation to negotiate. The operations director did not need to actively oppose the project to kill it. They simply needed to withhold their informal alignment. By leaving the proposal sitting in the administrative gray zone, they allowed the organization's natural inertia to do the work of a veto for them. The project died of exposure, while the team was still waiting for an email that was never written. This is the accountability vacuum the formal system leaves open, and it will be filled by someone. The only question is whether it is filled by you deliberately or by others by default. So we move from diagnosis to countermeasure. The instrument is the 3-node protocol. It has 3 steps, and it is a discipline of capital preservation, not manipulation. Map. Identify the 3 people who actually control the resources you depend on: access, information, and budget. Not the 3 highest titles, the 3 real nodes surfaced by the diagnostic markers. Most professionals cannot name them, which is itself the finding. Weight. Assign each node to the resource it governs. The gatekeeper of access is managed differently from the holder of budget. Precision here is the difference between a relationship and a transaction. To weight a node, you must identify its unique currency, because power does not speak a single language. Nodes of access run on calendar real estate and information filtering. You manage them by reducing their operational friction. Nodes of information run on early visibility. You manage them by trading high-value, unprompted perspective. Nodes of budget run on risk mitigation. You manage them by documenting the downstream financial security your work provides. The amateur treats every corporate connection as a generic networking opportunity. The protocol treats them as distinct asset classes requiring localized strategies. If you attempt to pay an access gatekeeper with financial data or a budget holder with proximity, you are misallocating your social capital. Preload. Dedicate 1 hour of your weekly calendar to structural maintenance, pre-clearing slide decks, informal alignment syncs, and unprompted resource sharing before you need a single signature. This is the entire mechanism. Social proof of belonging must exist prior to the allocation decision, because at the moment of decision, it is already too late to build it. A worked example. A director wants headcount approval in the next budget cycle. The naive approach is to write an excellent proposal and submit it on the deadline, a model identical to the analyst who waited for the work to speak. The protocol approach begins 2 quarters earlier. The director maps 3 nodes: the finance partner who controls budget, the peer director whose endorsement constitutes social proof, and the chief of staff who controls access to the decision meeting. Over those 2 quarters, the director supplies the finance partner with unprompted, useful data, aligns quietly with the peer, and makes the chief of staff's life marginally easier on 3 unrelated occasions. By the time the proposal arrives, it is not being evaluated cold. It arrives pre-endorsed into a room already disposed to grant it. The proposal did not win. The preloading won. The proposal merely documented the decision that the relationships had already made. This is what senior leaders mean when they treat the informal map as the real org chart and invest deliberately in coalition maintenance. They are not being political in the pejorative sense. They are practicing structural arbitrage on a system the competent professional refuses to acknowledge. Which leaves one question, and it is the one that defines a career rather than a quarter. If politics is the operating system of all collective resource allocation, if every institution runs on this informal layer beneath the formal one, then someone is writing that operating system. Someone sets the terms by which belonging is granted and resources move. The professional who has merely learned to navigate the system is still a citizen of it. The question is, what happens to those who stop navigating and begin to author? That is a different discipline and a different kind of risk. We will take it up next.